Alright, we have a glut of jam. We preserved raspberries last week with some unconventional methods. So far, it's working. Turns out people from history, they knew what they were doing. And today, out here in this 1889 original homestead cabin, we're taking that raspberry jam and making not only a sweet dessert, but a savory lunch as well. So let's light the fire, grab the cast iron, and see if this jam is going to kill us or give us a fantastic start to finish meal.
Ooh, hot. Okay, so just a little bit ago, we made raspberry preserves, and we did them the 1800s way.
We didn't use modern methods, no canning. The jam was made with honey and all the jars sealed with either beeswax or paper dipped in alcohol. But this leads us to our first challenge, getting the wax off. We can't cook with this jam unless we can get it out of the jar.
Okay, I'm gonna use a clean knife. I'm gonna see if I can pop this wax lid off. I need a really sharp knife because there's not much gap. Well, there shouldn't really be any gap, but there is a slight gap between the jar and the wax, and I'm gonna try to wiggle it out. Whoa. Oh, 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 oh. There it goes. It was tight, but not super tight, which is good for opening the jar, maybe a little bit bad for preserving it. We'll see. As I poured the wax, the force of it pouring created a little well and it sort of sucked the jam up into it. But you can tell that creates a really good seal. So you can tell it's sealed well on the bottom. It definitely had perfect contact with the jam because it's not totally smooth. It copied the terrain of the jam. But around the sides, it was just that little bit loose. The jam looks gorgeous. I see no signs of mold, no signs of a problem. Excellent color, excellent smell. It smells fresh and bright. Let's use this. Woo!
We have an unexpected combination planned for lunch. So we asked viewers, what should we make with this glut of raspberry jam? And the suggestions flew in, all of them great. Cobbler, pie, sourdough pancakes with raspberries on top, even Linzer torts and cakes. Now, I want to make them all. Here's the kicker though. It's a hot, stormy, humid day here in Montana, and the weather helps me choose what to make. So get ready for the roller coaster of my thought process here. I just have to say a huge thanks for the great ideas because they will get made on this channel. And for those of you who aren't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. It really helps keep us cooking in the cabin. Send one of our videos to a friend you think might like cooking out here with the rest of us. Okay, back to the weather and today's work. So given the season and the weather and the wood-fired tools we have at hand, what is right for today? Well, this one is coming from left field, an unexpected combo of flavors, I grant you that. But let's jump into a savory jam sandwich. Sausage, egg, spicy red pepper flakes, and jam, all on sourdough rounds. And I'll tell you what, this is gonna knock your socks off. And then we'll whip up one of those desserts viewers suggested. It's just me out here in this remote cabin today, so 2 small sausage patties is gonna do the trick. But let's doctor them up. Pork sausage with a little salt and pepper is great, but the over-the-top thing I'm adding here are red pepper flakes and a staple of the homesteader garden. With no kids and no husband out here right now, I can make this as spicy and as adventurous as I want. Though I'll tell you, spoiler alert, this proportion ends up being very easy to enjoy. It's the heat of the pepper, the bitterness of the sage, and the sweet of the jam that will make a humble quick meal like this and rocket it into the atmosphere. Whoop. Now, sourdough is cut into rounds with an old biscuit cutter because proportion here is key. We don't want too much of any one thing, but each ingredient really has to hold its own. So those sourdough bits of bread go onto a cast iron skillet to get toasted just to bring out their flavor. An egg from one of the ranch hens, cooked over easy, is up next. And then out to nature's great compost pile goes the shell. Now, I always struggle to get the timing right on an egg. I love it when that center has a little bit of run to it. But there's enough going on with this old stove and in my head. We may not achieve that today. Salt and pepper on top, of course. Now, cooking with old tools like this cook stove, you have to know the secrets to holding food over while other parts of the meal cook. And now with the egg just right, we can pull the sausages out of the upper warming ovens because it's time for assembly. Onto the lightly toasted sourdough rounds goes the red pepper sage sausage, and directly on top of that is the star of the show, that 1889 raspberry jam. That subtle taste of honey and the super sweet of the raspberries that have been cooked down. Whew. Then we slide the egg right atop the pile, and maybe just a touch more jam above. At this point, it's for beauty. And that is a humble, but just a bit bougie, savory jam sandwich out on the prairie. You'll never find a recipe for this in any old cookbook, but what you will find are lots of meat recipes, lots of wild game recipes that call for sweet jelly atop roasted meats.
The heat from the red pepper, the sweetness of the jam, totally unexpected flavors. Normally I'm not that adventurous, but this is incredible and such a unique way to use raspberry jam.
So I can extrapolate and know that this flavor combination is directly from history. And that's one of the fun parts with experimental archaeology, with getting into the minds of people in history. They're just like us, but often their choices and their combinations, they're a little bit different.
Whoa, I can hear that thunder coming. We've had massive rainstorms and hailstorms. I'm worried this one's gonna bring the same thing. But this lunch right here, this is so spectacular, and the combination of flavors, really unexpected. Spicy, sweet, savory, and we have a dessert going in the oven that will top everything off to perfection. Let's get cooking.
We aren't stopping at lunch because we need to make one of those suggested desserts that viewers wrote in to tell us about. And I pulled out some perfect period correct tart tins just this week that would have been well known to people in the 1800s. And the late 1800s is kind of our passion out here. It's when this cabin was originally built, and it's a time period steeped in history out here on the Western Prairie. But I've got some really practical reasons why a raspberry tart should be on our plates today.
Tarts were much easier to make than a pie crust, especially out here in the summer when it's hot and there's no way you're gonna keep your lard ice cold. You're not gonna chill this for an hour. You need something that can just work with the weather, and a tart is that food. When you think about making pie crust, the whole trick to a great pie crust is keeping everything cold. Cold lard, cold water, minimal touching. This method, the butter and the lard are hot. Now you let them cool a little bit when they come off the stove, but realistically, this is a totally different way of doing it. And it should yield a really delicious, crisp tart crust for our raspberry tarts.
This tart recipe has its roots in a traditional Scottish shortbread, the polar opposite of a pie crust. We start with flour, but of course we put an 1800s twist on it. A cup of sifted flour and half a cup of heritage flour, the very same variety of wheat grown in the 1800s and favored by bakers throughout Europe, especially in France. Anyone who knows flour knows that modern wheat is a pretty far cry from what our great-grandparents would have known and were eating 150 years ago. The flavors are different, the digestibility is different. So we have a nutty, flavorful heritage wheat flour, and into that goes a half a teaspoon of salt to really bring out those flavors. Half a cup of powdered sugar is next. The fineness of the sugar here gives a different texture to the finished tarts. More crisp, more delicate. A homesteader in 1880 may very well have had to powder this themselves in a mortar and pestle. No small feat there. But to bring this crust together, we need fats. Butter goes in for flavor, but a touch of lard would always have been on the homesteader's list of ingredients. We so rarely see this ingredient in our modern world, but lard gives pastries and desserts a very specific texture. Good lard doesn't impart flavor. No, it's all about texture. Okay, on to the odd part here, which is that the fats are heated up, just to melt them. A hot cast iron skillet is waiting for us on the cook stove and is perfect for this job. And then they go into a well formed in the dry ingredients. The wooden spurtle is perfect for getting them incorporated, but not overmixed. That will give us a tough crust, and we don't want that. We want tender, but held together. Crisp to the tooth, but not tough.
But it's time to get them into their little shells. And I have 4 specific little tools for this. They are tart tins, and the bottom comes out of them. It's a very specific piece of baking equipment, but also very common for back in the day. So something like a tart is very traditional. People probably would have had these little tart tins because this food works just great when everything's warm. But we're gonna put that to the test. So it's time to get this dough packed nice and tight into our tart tins, and then we'll blind bake them in the oven. We'll see how this goes. Should be slightly less finicky than a pie crust, but it's a whole different method.
Today we're using not just the stovetop, but the oven too. And getting a wood-fired oven going on a windy, stormy day is a bit trickier than usual. Today I got caught flat-footed. I was busy sweeping up before the cooking of the day was to begin, and I was killing flies, as one does in an old cabin made of unfinished wood. It's a little bit gross, but it's life. But what I should have been doing was listening and babying my freshly started fire.
Oh, no. No. I'll tell you what, those early stages of lighting a fire, you've got to be on top of it. Each piece of wood is a little different, has a little more moisture, a little less. The sapwood I lit it with burnt great, but as soon as that sapwood was gone, my next layer of bigger wood must have had too much moisture. I was listening with my ears, and when I didn't hear that crackling and popping sound, I knew that something was wrong. And so I went over, and sure enough, that wood box was just smoke. Smoke and black logs, but a little bit more air. You can see I turned the oven off, and then I opened up the vent. So I'm trying to get more oxygen into that wood box, and poof, that did the trick. It's lit again, and I can hear the crackling. So there we go. All right, we're back on track.
Let's get the tart crust pressed into the tins, because that oven has had some time now to heat up. And I'm really only looking for a 350 degree oven, nothing too hot. A pie crust would need 425. But of course out here, we don't go off of numbers like that. It's all just feel. But you'd be amazed how close you can tell by simply putting your hand into the oven for a second or 3. You can know where that oven temp is at pretty darn well. Now, it's feeling good to me. So that soft dough, it's packed roughly into the tins. And we're blind baking it, or baking it without any jam in it, for roughly 10 minutes. This is rustic fare, not fancy fare. And we don't even have to oil these tins at all, because the butter of the crust is gonna do that for us just fine.
Oh, I don't know if you can hear the wind whipping over the roof, but it looks like another storm is blowing in. They come in from the southwest and they blow through. This July, we're right about to August. We have had a heck of a lot of moisture, and as of yesterday, some real tragedy. So I want to take you guys out to look at the Rouge de Bordeaux crop. It's not as bad as it could be, but we got some of the dreaded HAIL. And today it's looming on the horizon again. They're expecting up to an inch, inch and a half of water. And at this time of year, that water sometimes falls as ice. So let me show you the fields.
What's this button for?
Okay, so George and I came up here, we're checking on the Rouge de Bordeaux. This is an 1800s wheat. So this is the type, the flavor, the digestibility, all of this is straight out of the 1800s. This is the sort of flavor that people would have recognized. This is what people ate back in history. And we are so excited to hopefully get to cook with it, make pasta with it, do all those different things. But, and there's a big one here, About a week ago, channel members will know this, we got hit pretty hard with the dreaded HAIL. I fear even saying its name. And, you know, I think I'm so terrified of it because we've been hit before and it's cost us pretty big. So this whole year, this old school grain, it's a big experiment. And we've been very lucky with moisture. Very, very lucky. It's been such a good rain year. But that last week of hail, that did a little bit of damage. So George and I are up here and we can check on this wheat and just see how the heads are filling, how things are doing, because we still have some time left. I mean, this crop is coming along really well, but because it's a heritage variety, that means it's slow. I mean, this was bred for Europe, basically. It was bred for France, and Montana's a little bit harsher than France. So we probably have at least a month left. And right now it's already August. So that puts us into September. You know, we've been known that first week of September to have a frost. So we are on the knife's edge of this crop, but we're really hopeful and we're really excited. We've got a stone mill all set, a Ukrainian stone mill all ready to go for when this crop comes in, if this crop comes in. But it's worth checking on it. There's not much we can do, but we can hope. We checked that wheat on a sunny day, but the storms are back, and that thunder is starting to roll in. Into the cabin we go to get those tarts back into the oven. The shells have been baked a little bit, and now it's time for the jam. On top goes a dollop of honey-sweetened raspberry jam, made and preserved the 1800s way. Each little tart tin gets its spoonful. That oven just needs to stay hot for another 10 minutes to see these tarts baked through to perfection. And that's part of what makes this dessert pretty easy. No long bake times, no super hot temperatures, and with a wood-burning oven, that is a big help. I can just bet that small tarts like these were much, much more common in the 1800s than any large pie or fancy cake. Those get a lot trickier out here, and they'd only have been for the most special of occasions.
This storm rolling in is making me very nervous. It's one of those things, I think I'd better get out of here while I can, because the mud is getting very deep. And I don't want to be under a tin roof when that hail starts. If that hail starts.
Just getting to have homemade jam for this recipe required a major amount of work. Sweaty, all-day work. And it's something I've been thinking about when bustling around out here in this one-room cabin. Melting and separating beeswax and honey, that was an eye-opening test to the sheer amount of labor and planning that everyday life took. You had to always be thinking ahead. Every job was seasonal, and if you forgot to do one, that was it for the year.
These tarts, they smell incredible. We gotta get out of here. That storm is on its way. We've got to go. We're taking them with us. The kids are gonna be happy.
Now, I lived off-grid alone for a lot of years, but we don't live here. This 1889 homestead cabin is out in a remote field without water, power, or much of a road. But that said, I'd drop everything and live here in a heartbeat. There's a simplicity and beauty to this life that our great-grandparents knew well. They knew the hardship and the sacrifice too, so perhaps it wasn't so romantic to them. But the humble honesty of this place means a great deal to me. The family was fed today thanks to this old cook stove, and I hope you'll come cook with us and explore a way of life nearly gone when we see you in the cabin next week. Cheers.
Here, Mags, set another plate. Thank you. So what you do, Mags, is the bottom pops out.
Put it right there.
Oh, so you take the
I
tart.
try pushing
Good
on it.
job.
I try pushing.
Ready, George? Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Mags got it?
One last one, and I get to do this one. I take a bite. I'm with the big half.
What do you think? George looks genuinely excited.